Happy Media Summit Day, everybody. How are you doing? Excellent. Thank you all so much for being here. Thank you so much to UMSC for the lovely introduction. And Professor Glaude, thank you for sitting down with me.
It's my pleasure.
So we're going to get into a really, what I think will be an extremely fulfilling conversation about gaining trust from diverse communities in just a moment. But help us set the table here, because we know that journalism has always been a cornerstone of our democracy. But would you say that that's always been true for Black communities?
Well, first of all, it's a delight to be here. It's a delight to be in conversation with you. And, you know, I mean, the country has been shadowed by its contradictions since its founding. And even though we talk about, you know, the press as the fourth estate has been shadowed by those contradictions as well. And so when we think about the Freedom's Journal, founded in 1827, its aim, of course, was to, in some ways, cover the circumstances of not only free Blacks in the North, but the situation, the context of the cruelty and the barbarity of slavery. And so there's always been, in so many ways, this kind of parallel world, right? Trying to give an account of the reality of those who bear the brunt of the country's contradictions, trying to give voice to the underbelly of the whale, to use Melville's image, right? And it's all barnacled, of course. And so I think to understand the role of the Black press over the course of its history, from the first with the Freedom's Journal to Douglas's North Star, to Douglas's paper, to Chicago Defender, to the Baltimore Sun, to the New York Age, all the way to the ways in which social media functions today, it's often aimed at not only covering the expansiveness of Black life, but also shining a light on the country's contradictions.
And you mentioned some examples there. What would you say is the earliest example of when we saw the Black press really being able to foster trust within the community that they are covering?
Oh, absolutely. I would go to the first, the Freedom's Journal, 1827. And in some ways, you know, you have to think about, you know, the country isn't really a country yet. You know, the idea of the American nation state emerges post-Civil War, the post-Second Reconstruction, right? And so what we see in the Freedom's Journal is the way in which the date and the year constitutes the basis of an imagined community. To think about relationships, obligations of those who are free, in inverted commas, and their connection and obligation to those who are enslaved. And so there is a vibrant public space generated around the conditions of Black life within those pages, not as objects of charity, right? Not as objects of charity, but in some ways a kind of pursuit of the question of justice that would then push white abolitionists to embrace the issue, you see. And so I think the imagined community, the way in which newspapers allow us to speak or to think across regional divides, across differences, across the specificity of where we live, right? We see that evidenced in the very beginning with the very first, and it only was published between 1827 and 1829.
And how is that, would you say that
See, when I hear stuff like that, I get paranoid.
I know, I'm like, hold on now. Everything appears to be okay, but we'll let you know if not. But how would you say, so how did we get to where we are today, where we see declining trust not only in diverse communities, but at large in the press?
You know, Paris, I've been thinking about this a lot. And I want to say this, and I say it with all honesty and with no malice in my heart. A bit of rage, but no malice. We toggle between sentimentality and rage when it comes to white folk. Because the motivation behind the issue of race in the country isn't driven by the question of justice. It's often driven by a philanthropic enterprise. What can we do for Black folk? And so once one tires of that, Ralph Ellison wrote a piece in Time magazine in 1970 where he says, once the country tires of the question of racial equality, it then reaches for the fantasy of a lily white America. It reaches for secession. So we move from sentimentality, what Baldwin described as the mask of cruelty, crocodile tears, wet eyes, the sentimentality that we saw, that we read in Uncle Tom's Cabin, right? Advocacy that's rooted in charity. And once that isn't sufficient, then we want to rid ourselves of the problem altogether. So we move from sentimentality to erasure.
Is it safe to say that we've reached that point?
We're in a moment of erasure. We don't want to tell the stories. We don't want us to be in position. Look at this room compared to the room that was here earlier. I know people got things to do, but just think about it, right? So when we think about the moment we're in, it's part of this ongoing cycle that is a result of a repeated tragic choice, one that is evident or was evident at the founding.
You have said that as we tackle this next iteration of an ongoing civil rights movement, that we can't use the tactics that were deployed in the 60s because the landscape has shifted. What tactics should we be using?
I don't know. We have to figure
How are we
it
gonna figure it out?
I know we got to go. I don't know. We have to figure it out together. The only thing I do know, it's in our hands. It's not in the hands of politicians. It's not in the hands of so-called prophets. It's in our hands. And I know we have to go, but let's think about this. We're faced with an issue. Think about the paper, the parchment upon which the Declaration of Independence was signed in the Constitution. Think about an ink well right next to it. And think about it spilling, like an oil spill in the Gulf of America. Think about it, right? And think about, in order to read the letters on the document, you got to hold it up to a candle to see it. The stain stains everything. Not everything about America, not everything in America is about race, but everything it seems is. But when you think about the stain, I want you to understand that the stain isn't us. It's you. It's whenever the idea of the white American asserts itself, we have to reckon with the calamity. Not the idea of you individually, but the idea that the country belongs to you. And then we have to reckon with the calamity. And now, in this moment, we face losing the entire damn thing. 250 years later, we're still dealing with this. And so what will we do? I don't know. We have to do it together. We will see.